secret bunker somewhere outside of Nashville, Tennessee. This is the award-winning podcast, ParaReality.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for listening tonight. My name is Sandman, and I'll be your guide through this strange realm of ghosts, cryptids, UFOs, aliens, conspiracy theories, and other unsolved mysteries that I like to call ParaReality. Well, after another long season of the podcast, it's finally come down to this. The season 14 finale of ParaReality. You know, most podcasters who do, as I use my air quotes, seasons, usually break down their seasons into somewhere anywhere between 2 to 4 months or something like that, but not here at ParaReality. No, my loyal listeners, things are done differently on this podcast. A ParaReality season consists of 11 straight months of what most would consider to be a podcast marathon. And I really enjoy doing what I do, and I know people do seasons in order to give themselves a break and recoup and all that sorts of stuff. But I don't do a weekly show. I do a bi-weekly show, right? Actually, I do 2 shows a month. First and third Friday of every month. It doesn't matter how many weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks in the month. It doesn't matter. I do a show on the first and third Friday of every month. So I kind of get breaks here and there, unlike people who do weekly podcasts. And if you do a weekly podcast and you're doing everything on your own, like most of us podcasters are, then it can get really grueling and time-consuming, and you do need a break. So if I were doing a weekly podcast, and trust me, for 2.5 years, I actually did a weekly gig. I did 2 shows, 2 different shows, one on the first and third Friday of every month, and one on the second and fourth Friday of every month. It was 2 different ones. I did one on the internet, and I did one on terrestrial radio at WRFN here in Nashville. And I did that for 2.5 years, and trust me, it is grueling. So I can understand needing a break, because I certainly didn't get a break in those 2.5 years. So I understand the need for breaks. And, I need one too. I deserve one too, even though my podcast isn't weekly, but I still deserve one. So I decided that I just traditionally do one podcast in the month of December, and then take the rest of the month off because of the holidays and stuff like that. And it's not that easy to do a podcast during the holiday season. So here we are, the season 14 finale of ParaReality. Man, I'm ready for a break. I'm ready to have some time off and spend it with Mrs. Sandman, curled up on the couch, celebrating the holiday with our tradition of watching a horror movie on Christmas. So much fun. And I can't believe I've been doing this podcast in one form or another for 14 seasons. Taking breaks here and there. Some seasons I almost did no podcasting. I had like a couple of seasons where I might have only did 6 episodes for that season. Things get in the way, life happens, and work, school, other life events, whether they're good or bad, get in the way sometimes. But the last couple of years I've been going strong, and man, I'm really excited for what the future holds. So I'm looking forward to a break, but I'm also looking forward to bringing you season 15. So last episode I entertained you with taking our American holiday of Thanksgiving and revealing its pagan roots. And since in my previous years I've done the same thing to Christmas, I decided to do something very different for the season finale. I'm going to tell you about something that's typically an English Christmas tradition. And I know you're probably asking, well, Sandman, what's that? I'm glad you asked. It's the tradition of telling ghost stories for Christmas. Yep, that's right, ghost stories. Everyone by now knows Charles Dickens' classic A Christmas Carol. Well, that's a ghost story. It was written by Charles Dickens in 1843, and it's no coincidence that it just so happens to be a ghost story, along with a holiday tale. The English have been telling Christmas ghost stories for centuries, and I think that this is a great tradition that's really in danger of being lost forever, and that's because people don't do it hardly at all anymore. Well, this is my attempt to preserve this wonderful, typically English tradition. So on tonight's journey into the realm of ParaReality, I'm going to let you, my loyal listeners, sit back and relax for a change, and you're going to listen to me tell you some tales of Christmas ghosts. I'm actually going to break this episode down into 3 parts. In the first part, I'll tell you about 5 traditional Christmas ghost stories. In the second part, I'll tell you some real-life Christmas ghost stories as told by those who experienced them. And lastly, I'm going to take a few minutes to take a look back at what's been covered this season on the podcast, and then take a look ahead to what's in store for next season. But as always, to learn more, you'll need to turn on, tune in, and find out. However, before we begin tonight's journey, let me tell you how you can contact me here at the podcast, because as you know, there are several ways that you can go about doing this, and here they are. First of all, you can always email the show. That's sandman@parareality.com. That's sandman@parareality.com. That's the quickest and easiest way to get in touch with me. Although these others, you can also get in touch with me there as well, but email is usually pretty quick. Second way you can get in touch with me is you can find me on Facebook by going to the ParaReality page on Facebook. That would be facebook.com/sandman.parareality. Or if you're already in Facebook, just type in ParaReality on a search there in your Facebook, and it'll take you right to the ParaReality Facebook page. Third is you can follow me on Twitter. My username on Twitter is @ParaRealRadio. That's @ParaRealRadio. And lastly, you can always call the show on the studio line and leave me a message. That number to call is area code 615, then dial 692-1170. That number to call again is 615-692-1170. You can leave me a message on the studio line. I'm in the studio a lot, though, working on the podcast, so I might answer the phone, but probably not. You never know. And also, I want you to remember this. If you decide to leave me a message, you're giving me permission to play your comment back on the show. So if you don't want that to happen, you'll need to let me know somewhere in your message. And I'm always looking for interesting stories for the podcast. So if you have a story that you'd like to get on the show, but you're not necessarily looking to be a guest, but you want to tell your story, tell it to me over the voicemail. There's about a 3-minute time limit. If you run out of time, call back and pick up where you left off. But just remember, if there's something that you don't want me to play back on the show, you need to let me know somewhere in your voicemail. Now, I will not play last names. I will not play contact information, email addresses, phone numbers, anything like that you leave. I will edit that stuff out. Everything that you say as far as personal contact stuff will remain anonymous as far as the rest of the world is concerned. So don't be afraid to leave any type of message. So those are all the different ways you can get in touch with me here, Sandman, on ParaReality. I'll go over them again real quick. First of all, quick and easy, sandman@parareality.com is the email address. You can also find me on Facebook by going to facebook.com/sandman.parareality. That's the ParaReality Facebook page. You can also follow me on Twitter @ParaRealRadio. That's @ParaRealRadio. Or you can always call that studio line, 615-692-1170. And those are all the different ways that you can get in touch with me, Sandman, here on the show. Now here comes a part of the show that I always love to do. This is the email section. And if you'll remember, I have a loyal listener of the show. His name is Trey, and he emails in every so often. And I guess it was sometime in October. He emailed the show, and I read it here when Eric was sitting in the co-host seat. So we talked a little bit about what he emailed, and it was it's a very long email, and it was basically he was talking about the satanic verses of the Talmud's Jewish supremacy, and it's part of what he calls his post-human manifesto. And we discussed a little bit about this from his email. It was, like I said, a very long email that I didn't want to read the whole thing on the show. And I asked him, what was he trying to accomplish? I enjoy reading people's point of views, and his is very interesting with his post-human manifesto, but it certainly does seem to border on anti-Semitic views, and I'm not sure if that was his intent or not. And I asked him, would you elaborate a little more on what you're trying to accomplish? And so he replied to me, and this is what Trey's response is to my question about what are you trying to accomplish. And he says, what am I trying to accomplish? Have you listened to David Icke lately? COVID is just another tool to accomplish what the Zionists, not Jews, some white people are Zionists. If you open your mind, it's not a racist thing. It's a control thing. I am a pagan because I respect the untainted beliefs of my Nordic and Native American ancestors. And I know you are intrigued with Nazis, referring to several of the shows that I've done on the occultism of Nazi and Hitler and World War II. And he says, I know you are intrigued with Nazis. Well, the Nazis were Christians, so their mistake was not realizing all they had to do was kill the Bible. Not a single Jew had to die. That's how you kill, and this is what he says, that's how you kill in all through history. And I'm not sure whether that's a typo there. You must kill their God. The Zionists are controlling us. Like it or not, World War III is happening. Now, wake up. Thanks so much, Trey. Okay, Trey. Well, I appreciate you trying to draw that line between anti-Semitism and what you're trying to accomplish with people who you call Zionists. I will have to challenge you on your comment about the Nazis. The Nazis actually were not Christians. They did not want to continue or propagate the Christian religion. Hitler was on record for saying that, although he did reference God a lot in his speech because he knew he had to, because that was Christianity was the main religion of the Jewish population, so he had to reference God in his speeches. And Heinrich Himmler was absolutely not Christian. He was trying to take paganism, a form of it, and make it the main Jewish religion. I mean, look at all the things that he did to try to get that done. Wilhelmsburg Castle was going to be the center of not only the SS, but basically the center of his new religion that he was trying to create. He was actually trying to rewrite a whole bunch of German history and a whole bunch of their religious beliefs and turn it into some quasi-weird pagan religion type deal, totally wiping Christianity out. So there's that. Now, I know that you are fascinated by people you are called the Zionists, and you want to make sure that you're not saying that these people are Jewish. Okay, I understand that. I still don't. I wish I could understand a little bit more in depth about who you were calling Zionist and what makes one a Zionist. And I'm going to also respectfully disagree with you about COVID being a tool of Zionist. I really don't think, even though I've done more than one episode about the conspiracy theories behind COVID-19, I have gone on record for saying that I do not think that this is something that was released deliberately, even though I discussed that possibility. It is my opinion that I don't believe that it was. I think it is a result of experiments done by the Chinese, and those experiments got out by accident, and that's why we have this worldwide pandemic going on today. I don't think that this was something that's released by anyone to control anything. So thanks again, Trey, for writing in, and I appreciate you trying to explain to me what you're trying to accomplish. I'm still a little, like I said, I still would like to understand what makes someone a Zionist and who exactly the Zionists are. So I'm sure that we'll hear back from you in the future, back on season 15 next year. So thanks so much, Trey, for sending that reply in. All right, so let's talk about some Christmas ghost stories, shall we? You know, everyone thinks of Christmas time as a season of mostly pleasant intrusions, 30 or so days of remembering to tend, checklist style, to the latest pressing bit of Yuletide business that comes racing back to you, you know, stuff like the well wishes, the trips to Home Depot for stuff, those oddly named seasonal drinks that everyone seems to start drinking around this time of year, you know, like wassail. What exactly is wassail anyway? Have you ever had wassail? I have. It's pretty good. It's been years, but I don't know exactly what it is. I do know you get it around Christmas time, though. You can see it in the grocery stores, little wassail packs and stuff. So Christmas is ultimately a fun time. It's commonly celebrated with friends and family around a fantastic feast, and people get gifts for no apparent reason, and generally a good time's had by all. But what are the darker elements of Christmas? What of Christmas for those people who enjoy making merry most years, but may be experiencing hard times, especially this year? Having experienced both sides of Christmas, there's but one constant that I'm aware of that serves you well in both the merriest of times and in the darkest. And that's the classic English Christmas ghost story. You'd think that Halloween would be the holiday that elicits the best macabre stories, but you're going to want to check that opinion and get more on the Ebenezer Scrooge side of the equation. Time was the English loved to scare you out of your mind come December, but in a fun way that resulted in stories that were well outside of your typical ghost story structure. If you're into ghost stories, you probably know that someone by the name of M.R. James is held as the master by most. His thing was to write a tale for Christmas, invite some of his friends and his favorite students into his room and read it over candlelight after everyone had been plied with eggnog. Readings for the season, but not necessarily of the season. You know what I'm saying? There's not a lot of actual Christmas in James's stories. There's a lot of ghosts and weird stuff happening, though. Now, writers of ghost stories, James included, love to make like authoritative list about what makes these stories work. They offer spectral prescriptions that, as you might be aware of, rarely hit upon the same guidelines, and then they tend to violate these notions within their own work. But I like the spirit of that endeavor. It's a naughty slash nice list for the spooky crowd. And as someone who likes ghost stories, and especially Christmas ghost stories, in the happiest of years, and who turns to them at those Christmas times when the glimpsed mistletoe kisses of new lovers are akin to the springs of holly jabbed through the temple, I have some ideas on what you want when it's time to settle in with your eggnog, dim the lights, and turn some pages and read. The first key to a Christmas ghost story is a friendly atmosphere. People in these stories are well fed, they're often hanging out in groups, and you feel like you're hanging out with them as you're reading this story. You don't want to leave the party any more than they do. It's cold outside, but it's warm where they are, and it's time to rediscover that sense of play that so many of us adults lose over the years. And when we're fortunate, we remember to rediscover this at Christmas time. Next thing is a game might be proposed, say like a storytelling game. Then here's when the terror comes. The status quo is infused with a sensation of something being just a little bit off. Laughs give way to shared and uneasy glances that, maybe this isn't all merrymaking. But this isn't the sense of terror of like H.P. Lovecraft or some sort of impending doom or the horror that indicates our fundamentally base natures. It's a rather more pleasing terror. The ghosts, even when they're out to do something quote unquote good, like avenge themselves upon us, also seem to have dipped into the eggnog a time or two with their own playfulness being evident. Sure, they can kill you, but when they do it with like having a joke or two at the ready. These are the short days of the year, and a weird mixture of pagan habits and Christianity mingle together like a confusing, jumbled-up puzzle with no assembled picture of it to go by. There's also booze in the stories, and people didn't have TVs back then. People drank, and then people got to telling stories. Somebody told a story, and someone tried to tell a bigger one, and then, lo and behold, we got a whole ghost story Christmas tradition thing going on. But even if you're into this stuff, there's a decent chance you've not read any of these often overlooked Christmas tales, stories which have always made me grateful for their company, blending themselves to my mood and needs and wishes in ways that nothing else quite has. They're also damn good fun. So ladle yourself out some wassail or some mead or some spiced apple cider or whatever it is that you're going to drink, some eggnog, or just grab your favorite holiday drink of choice, like I said, and allow me to recommend these ghostly tales. Now, I'm going to go through, 5 of them, maybe 6. And I'm not going to tell you the whole entire story, okay? I just want to lay out the outline, and I want you, because if I was to tell the whole story, trying to read all of these stories, it'd take forever, right? And it'd be a show longer than what you want to listen to, like several hours, and I'm not going to do that. So what I'm going to do is hit the highlights and it'll give you the synopsis, and hopefully this will pique your interest enough to seek these stories out. The first one is called Between the Lights by E.F. Benson. It was written in 1912. Now, this is a tale set on Christmas Eve and looks back on the Christmas that was the year before, when the host of the tale or the party had a vision of primal, shack-entombed beast advancing on him as he set out upon, as he was sitting out on his lawn and watching his wife and her good friend play croquet. The creatures are advancing, and he's paralyzed. He can't move. And it's just by some sort of Christmas mercy, that this hold over him is relinquished. And daytime haunts can seem even less natural than the midnight variety, and this one proves ominous when the vision is actualized, before we all collectively shudder and call for our more mulled cider or wassail, and the tale is complete. So he's sitting there watching. It's daylight, and he's watching his wife and her friend play croquet, and they're having a good time, and he's enjoying himself, just watching them enjoying themselves. And suddenly some otherworldly creatures make an appearance. And they're creeping up on the party, and he's paralyzed, helpless to do anything about it. And just when it looked like there's nothing that can be done and everyone is doomed, everything goes back to normal. It is a very well-written story and very suspenseful. It's called Between the Lights by E.F. Benson. This next story is called The Kit Bag, and it's by a person named Algernon Blackwood, written in 1908. Now, we've all been in the position of racing off for the Christmas holiday, feeling that we've forgotten to pack something, right? Well, in this story, there's a law clerk whose boss just cleared a murderer, and the clerk is packing what he believes to be the travel bag said employer has lent to him. But you know how the holidays are. They can be misleading, and one man's luggage can be another's sack to lug around a severed head in. And again, there's that notion of warmth, looking forward to things. Our main character wishes to, chat up the ladies and go back in his lodge, back in the lodge on his ski holiday and have some drinks and maybe get lucky. And you want this guy to be okay. You want him to succeed. But unfortunately, he's ripped open from stem to stern and bleeds out as the clock chimes in on Christmas. Yeah, I'm only kidding. A very good thing about Christmas ghost stories is that you can be frightened, but the new people you've come to care about in the story tend to live to see another day. So, what really happened? Did he really die? Was he imagining all this? Was it a dream? You got to read the story to find out. And it's called The Kit Bag. Very suspenseful story. This next story is called A Strange Christmas Game, written by J.H. Riddle, all the way back in 1863. So even a ghost story enthusiast, they tend to not know a goodly amount of Victorian ghost fiction was written by women. Well, maybe the majority of it. Mrs. J.H. Riddle was one of the best ghost story writers of her time, period. And in A Strange Christmas Game, this story, we have that idea of being playful. Only now it's the ghosts who are trying their hands at sport. Specifically cards. A brother and sister have recently taken possession of the house that was left to them in a will, and the demise of their benefactor plays out like some horrible, woebegone card game. And that's the premise of the story, and you have ghosts playing out a card game. Next we have Christmas Reunion by Sir Andrew Caldecott, written in 1912. This one comes from a book or volume called Not Exactly Ghosts, and this was a summation of Caldecott's approach. The things in the story could kind of happen on their own. Again, we begin at a family holiday party, but there's a guest who's, well, let's just say he's a prick. And everyone is pleased when this guy leaves, and they think, okay, we're going to have a better party now. And wouldn't you know it, he heads out at the same time as Santa Claus does. Or should I say, the family, thinks that it hired to put on a little act for the kids at the party. Anyway, this prick guest, we learn, did his uncle a bad turn once upon a time. He treated his uncle really bad, did something horrible to him once upon a time. And this Father Christmas, this Santa Claus, somehow knows about it. And worse still, he's an avenging Santa Claus. That is so cool, right? So Santa in this story is the ghost. Well, maybe or maybe not, because Santa could just be, some sort of pissed off kin of Mr. Prick. So you get to riddle it out for yourself. And that story is called Christmas Reunion, not Christmas Reunion, as in one word. It's Christmas Reunion, and it was written by Sir Andrew Caldecott in 1912. Then you have Smee by A.M. Burridge, written in 1931. Now, this is probably, I'll have to say, out of all of them, my favorite. So once again, we're at a party, and we're playing a form of hide and seek in which the seeker comes up upon the hider and says, "It's me," which, if you say that quickly and even breathlessly enough, comes out like, "It's me," right? So it's Christmas Eve, and this is a big old rambling house, but there's one tiny problem here. There's an extra player who doesn't number among the guests who's playing the game. And it's a sort of moral. Downing down the nog and playing hide and seek can make you want to pull a Scrooge, right? Reading this story, like drinking too much eggnog, would be enough to have you cancel your Christmas for this year or next year, because it is a scary story. It's called Smee by A.M. Burridge, written in 1931. And you really, if out of all the stories that I'm telling you, that I'm synopsing, you really need to read Smee, S-M-E-E, by A.M. Burridge. And that, my dear listener, are my top 5 haunted Christmas tales that you need to read to entertain yourself during this holiday season. So, Between the Lights by E.F. Benson, The Kit Bag by Algernon Blackwood, A Strange Christmas Game by J.H. Riddle, A Christmas Reunion by Sir Andrew Caldecott, and finally, my favorite, Smee by A.M. Burridge. Those are the 5 Christmas tales that you definitely need to read. But if you can only get around to one, make it Smee by A.M. Burridge, because that is a great tale, and it will make you think twice. So, excuse me. So let's talk about some more real haunted Christmas tales. Have you personally ever been visited by some sort of inexplicable holiday spirit? Well, from the mystical events surrounding the birth of Jesus to the haunting traditions of Charles Dickens' supernatural visitors in A Christmas Carol, Christmas and paranormal phenomena have had a close relationship from the very beginning. Christmas has long been associated with magic, miracles, and wonderful happenings that have no rational explanation. Now, the following is a selection of stories, strange Yuletide phenomena, including sightings of Santa Claus himself. Now, whether you're a believer or you think that everything's all, bah humbug, they do make for intriguing stories, and they'll give you something at least to think about. So here are 6 supposedly true Yuletide tales of ghosts and spirits as told by the people who experience them. This first one we're calling Christmas Church Ghosts. Now, this was experienced by Paulina T., and I'm going to read these to you as they were submitted. And this is what Paulina T. says. I was playing hide and seek with the other little kids from my mom's village of Setura, Western Samoa. I was quite young then, so I always followed my older cousin around. It was the middle of the night, and most of the kids were used to hiding anywhere in the dark. I wasn't used to it as I was only there for the Christmas holidays. I actually live in Australia. Since we were all hiding in the graveyard, we were able to find our way around the light cast by the church. We hid in the shadows and waited for the boy who was it. We could hear him coming, so we kept quiet. The boy was pretty loud. We wondered what he was making a fuss about, so we went to see. He later told us he had walked into the church as he thought that his brother was hiding there. He saw a boy standing right at the front of the altar. He didn't know if it was his brother because the boy's back was turned. He ran up and tapped this boy on the shoulder. As soon as he did, the strange boy disappeared and our friend fainted. We went home to tell his parents. We got back to find him still lying there, dead still. His parents took him home, and we never played in the graveyard at night again. We later found out that the boy's brother had been home the whole time. He hadn't been to the church at all. What really scared us was that the boy who fainted has been ill since that night and still hasn't recovered. Whoever was in the church must have been pretty mad that we kids disturbed him. Now that is freaking scary as hell. I don't know that I would ever go back to church of any kind ever again after something like that happened to me. Jeez. Our next story is the Christmas Visitor, and this was submitted by someone calling themselves Scarlet Dragon. I had an unusual visitor on Christmas Day 2008, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't Santa Claus passing by my house in Bloomington, Indiana. Excuse me. The day started in typical fashion with the opening of the gifts around the Christmas tree. I served an early Christmas dinner for family and friends, and everybody departed by 5 p.m., except my sister and brother-in-law, who lived with me. They were asleep in a bedroom at the end of the hall, but their door was open. I went into my bedroom with my dog, Toby, and shut the door securely. Toby curled up on the foot of my bed to sleep like he always does. It was chilly, so I pulled the blankets and comforter up around my head and curled up to nap for an hour. I was just dozing off when I heard the latch on my bedroom door open. I waited several seconds for my sister or brother-in-law to say whatever they come to say, but there was no other sound. It was almost 7 p.m., so my bedroom was pitch black. I'd left the lights on in the kitchen and the bathroom, and there were lots of Christmas lights in the living room, so the hallway would have been well lit. I would be able to see whoever was at the door just by lifting my head. I pushed the blankets down and lifted my head from the pillow, but just as I would have been able to see who was in the doorway, an extremely bright light hit me right in the face. I shielded my eyes and yelled, "Turn off that fucking light. You're blinding me." The light immediately disappeared, and I heard the bedroom door latch close. My bedside light is a touch lamp, so I tapped on it and looked around the bedroom. There was no one there except me and Toby. Toby jumped off the bed and went to the door without showing any signs of alarm. At first, I wasn't frightened because Toby's a Dutch Shepherd and was trained to be an excellent watchdog. Since Toby was already up, I decided to let him outside and see what Sis or her husband needed. When I went into the hallway, I could see both of them still in bed. I took Toby to the living room and let him outside. There was nobody there either. Ordinarily, I'm not a skittish person, and strange noises or lights wouldn't alarm me, but this situation was just too eerie, and the light had made my skin crawl. Let me add that the latch on my bedroom door is broken in such a way that the inside door handle must be jiggled for the latch to pop out and engage. It makes a very distinctive sound that I'm used to listening for because if it doesn't latch, the door swings open. I am absolutely positive that the door was latched and closed when I got into bed, just as I'm certain it was when the door latch I heard. just as I'm certain it was the door latch I heard during the incident. You learn how to read. When I left the bedroom, the door was latched closed again. I couldn't understand how my sister or brother-in-law could come into my room and then returned to their own bed and crawled under the covers in the few seconds it took me to reach the hallway. But I figured it had to be one of them, since Toby always barks and growls at everybody and everything, and that he doesn't immediately recognize. When my brother-in-law got up to get ready for work that night, I asked him what he'd wanted earlier in the evening when he opened my door. He looked puzzled and said, "I never got up, and I certainly never opened your door. I slept soundly the whole time I was in bed." Okay, so I asked Sis, "Did you want something earlier this evening when you opened my door?" She also looked puzzled and told me, I dozed off and on, but I never got out of bed, and I never saw or heard anything in the hallway. She leaves their bedroom door open at all times, and she faces the hallway so she can see if anyone's coming or going in the house. So, who was my special Christmas visitor, and how did they get in and out so quickly? Like most people, the thoughts of loved ones are always close at hand during the holiday season. When I first went to lie down, I was thinking how happy I was that my small family had enjoyed a pleasant Christmas, but it would have been so much better if my mother and brother had still been alive to share it with us. I would like to think it was my brother's spirit stopping by to say, "Merry Christmas, I still think of you too." I haven't been able to debunk this strange event or find any kind of rational explanation. I'm half afraid that my heart stopped during my sleep, and the light I saw was the bright light people report after near-death experiences. Leave it to me to see the stairway to heaven and ruin my chance at eternal paradise by saying, "Turn out that fucking light." I've made a mental note that if I ever see another bright light, to clean up my language just in case. Once again, another scary story. I don't know, there's this thing called sleep paralysis. Could have been some form of some experience she's had of sleep paralysis. Don't know. After all, she said she was almost asleep. She was could have been in that in-between stage, and she could have had a sleep paralysis experience. I don't know. Very long email, but yet very interesting nonetheless. This next one I'm calling this A Ghostly Christmas Caress. It was written by V. Page. And this is what V. Page writes. It was Christmas time of 1995 or 96 at my aunt's house on a reservation in North Dakota. Some of my family was in the living room watching television. The kids were playing in their rooms or sleeping, and my uncle, aunt, and I were sitting at the table putting a puzzle together. My cousin, who worked at a casino, was due home around midnight or 1 a.m. That night, as she pulled up and was walking toward the house, she looked in the window and saw me sitting at the table, my uncle sitting across from me. She also saw someone standing to the left of me and someone standing in the corner. She continued to walk in the house, thinking nothing of it. When she got inside, she said her hellos, she put her stuff away, and came to join us at the table. As we were sitting there talking, she looked at me and asked who was standing next to me a few minutes ago and who was in the corner. I told her no one, and she said, "Yeah, there was someone standing next to you. It looked like your mom, and she was playing with your hair." I have long hair, which I used to wear down all the time. She said this person was running her hand on my hair as a mother does to a child. It kind of freaked me out, as I was probably only 12 or 13 at the time. My cousin swears up and down that someone was standing over me, rubbing my head and watching me put the puzzle together with my aunt and uncle, and that there was another person standing behind that person. We got around to thinking the second person was probably her mom, who passed away on her birthday a week before Christmas back in 1992. In my family, we consider our aunts and uncles to be just like our moms and dads. After thinking that it could have been her, it didn't scare me so much. Around Christmas, something strange almost always happens. We think it's just my mom visiting us. Wow, now that is a super sweet story, yet a super scary story at the same time. I don't know how well I would sleep for the next several nights after knowing that somebody was stroking my hair and I didn't feel it. Oh, man. I don't know. I don't know how I would, I don't know how I would take that. That's that of everything that I've read that's been submitted so far. That is the one that freaks me out the most. That one and the hide and go seek at the church one. That is, man. All right, moving on. This is called Santa Stuffs the Stocking, and it was submitted by someone named Misty G. And Misty G writes, when I was 9 years old, I could not get to sleep on Christmas Eve because I was excited about presents, and I was wondering if my parents had anything to do with the gifts that I had received from Santa the year before. We lived in Texas back then. That night was hot because the heater was on. I got thirsty. I got out of bed and cracked open my door to make sure no one was in the living room so I could get something to drink without being seen. And I also wanted to spy. Yeah, I used to do that too. Loved it. When I opened the door, I saw someone bent over, and then he stood up. It was Santa Claus, dressed in the red and white get-up. Strangely, I could see the Christmas lights from the tree shining through him. He was taking the stockings down off the mantel and placing them on the coffee table. When he started to turn around to put the next stocking on the table, I closed the door and jumped into bed. The next morning, I woke up and told my sister what I had seen. I told her where he had put the stockings. When we went into the living room, the stockings were where I said he had put them. We both turned and looked at each other and froze for a moment. From then on, I have told everyone that I believe in Santa. Now, as told by a child, that could be wishful thinking. It could also be that some of her family members was actually dressed up as Santa Claus because they knew that she would get up and spy and all that. And maybe she was just imagining being able to see through Santa. I don't know why there would be a Christmas ghost dressed as Santa Claus just randomly coming into people's homes. But that's my opinion. The next submission is called Santa and the Elf, and it's submitted by someone calling themselves Skitty Cat. No, Skitty Scat. Skitty Scat. Yeah. That's what we'll say, Skitty Scat. So Skitty Scat writes, this happened near Seattle, Washington on Christmas Eve, 1957 or 58. My mom was at the kitchen window when she yelled for my sister and me, ages around 5 and 7, to come look. There was Santa and an elf carrying a big brown bag walking right down the middle of the street. My dad went running out the door to see if Santa would come over and say Merry Christmas to us kids, but Santa, the elf, and the big brown bag had vanished. Now, that could have totally 100% been someone dressed as Santa walking down the street, and as soon as, when your dad went outside, it was just enough time for Santa to be gone. Maybe he was going to someone's house, and maybe he ditched in the house. I don't know. That one doesn't sound too suspicious to me. And finally, this is our final submission. It's called Santa at the Bedroom Door, submitted by Carrie K. And Carrie K writes, it was Christmas Eve, 1961. We were living in Boardman, Ohio. My bedroom was at the end of the house. I'd gone to sleep. I don't know what time it was, but I know it was very late when I suddenly woke up. I was staring at my bedroom door, which was catty-corner from my bed. As the door slowly opened, I pretended to close my eyes because I didn't want my mother or father to catch me up in the middle of the night. There was a nightlight in the hallway and one behind the dresser in my room, so there was some light. I was totally astonished, however, by who it was that opened the bedroom door. I found myself looking at a man dressed in a red suit. He had white trim around his waist, like fur, a long white beard, and was wearing a Santa hat. He had red pants and black boots. If I close my eyes, I can still see Santa standing in my door. It made such an impression on me. He stood there and looked at me for a few seconds, then closed the door. I pulled the blankets over my head. I was so scared. Finally, I looked out, but no one was there. The next day, I asked my mother if she or my father had been out of the bed the previous night. My mother said no. In fact, my sister was only 4 months old, and my mother told me she'd slept through the night for the first time since my sister was born. Neither of my parents had gotten up. Both of them were tired, and they both slept. So I don't know who or what looked in my bedroom that night. When I told my mother I'd seen Santa, she got really mad at me and told me that I had not. But I know what I saw. It was Santa Claus. I swear this story did happen, and I know I wasn't dreaming. Well, Carrie K, maybe you were dreaming. Once again, we have something else that could have been a sleep paralysis type deal. It could have been you were in that in-between state of sleep and wakefulness. And it could have been that combined with the anxiousness of a child on Christmas. I know I look, I have experienced sleep paralysis, and I didn't see Santa Claus. So mine was totally not Santa Claus. It was super duper scary. I've never heard of anyone having sleep paralysis and experiencing Santa Claus. Usually some sort of frightening thing, but let's face it, they were kids and that saw this and they were scared. So, and it was Christmas time. So maybe that's what it was. Or maybe once again, it was the parents who were dressing up as Santa Claus just in case, because, parents sometimes do that. I don't think my parents ever did. I can't imagine my dad ever dressing up as Santa Claus just to put presents out, but it's a possibility. But no, I don't think that. I don't think my dad would do something like that. But anyway, those are 6 stories of true Christmas time ghosts encountered as told by real people, the people who encountered them. So I know this hasn't been exactly the kind of ParaReality podcast that you're expecting, especially given that I'm not one to tell stories, and you can certainly tell that I am not a storyteller by the way I have described all of these stories that I have been telling you about. But I appreciate you, at least taking the time to listen to this podcast. And before we close down season 14, I want to take a look back at this season and talk about, some of the strange things that's happened this year and where I'm headed in 2015, because I got some plans for 2015, and I really am excited about what season 15, did I say 2015? Where I'm going for 2021, where I'm headed for season 15. You combine 2021 and season 15, and you get 2015 somehow. Yeah. Totally works out. God, maybe I do need a break. Maybe instead of just maybe I just need to take the whole month of December off. Oh my God. But I am pre-recording this. I'm actually recording this on Thanksgiving weekend. So in a sense, I do have the whole entire month of December off. And boy, apparently do I need it. So let's talk about season 14. Man, first of all, this has been one of the weirdest years because of, COVID. You can say that about everything this year because of COVID. It's such a weird year. I didn't get the opportunity to have Eric come in here in the bunker and do as much co-hosting as what I wanted him to do because of COVID. You got to maintain a 6-foot distance, which we can do here in the bunker, but it's just at certain times it's not safe even to do a 6-foot distance, and you should wear masks and all this other sorts of stuff. And we're talking about a confined space, and it's just not always been safe. So that's why you haven't seen Eric as much this year. I've had people ask me, what's going on with that, because he kind of disappears for, weeks and weeks at a time, and he comes back once and then he disappears for other weeks. It's just been, because of COVID, and then, trying to figure out how can we make this thing work here. It just doesn't always, the opportunities just aren't always there. So, there you go with that. I really am hoping that by the spring of 2021, we'll have, I hope this will be somewhat under control, because it hasn't been under control at all since this thing started. And with the vaccine coming out, I really hope that, that kind of clears the way for some form of normalcy. So that's why you haven't seen Eric around, is because of COVID, but he's still around, and I do bring him back when I can. And hopefully in 2021, he can make his triumphant return and come back on a monthly basis. So this has really been, 2020 has really been the year of the conspiracy theory, as far as I'm concerned. I focused heavily on conspiracy theories this season, for season 14. And we started off by talking about the Colorado drones all the way back in January. And that's a story that just kind of disappeared, right? It was all around for a little while, and then COVID hit, and then you hear anything, nothing. And I was talking with, when I did that show, I did it with a friend of the show, John Harrison, who comes on from, time to time and co-hosts the show or appears as a guest. And I always get a lot of good response when John Harrison is on the podcast. And I've had some people ask me, when are you going to bring John back? And, well, I don't know. Once again, you just got to get schedules and everything. We've talked about having him on again. It's just, trying to work his schedule out. He's not even anywhere close. He's out in the West somewhere, out in the deserts of New Mexico right now. And he's been there for a while, and who knows how much longer he's going to be out there. So anything that we do with him is, long distance via phone. But we talked a lot about conspiracy theories, or I talked a lot about conspiracy theories this year on the podcast. I did, like I said, the Colorado drones. I did more COVID than I can, COVID conspiracy theories than I care to shake a stick at. We talked about some viruses and the permafrost, and we talked about conspiracy theories surrounding famous people like Bruce Lee. And it was just the year of conspiracy theories here on ParaReality. And I didn't mean for the season to turn out to be a conspiracy theory season. That's just kind of the way the season worked. It's just how the topics played out. Conspiracy theories are still going to be a large part of the show. I don't think you can do a show of this nature without including conspiracy theories in it. I hope to not be as conspiracy theory heavy as what I was in season 14. Season 15 is going to, I hope, look very, very different. One of the other things that I accomplished in season 14 here in 2020 was I managed to open up a new merch shop with a spread shop, and got a lot of new merchandise out there. The very first thing I did for the podcast back in January was I actually created a new logo, the Ghost and Microphone logo that I've had since the beginning of the show. I had it for 13 seasons, and it was really you saw that logo and you knew it was ParaReality Radio. Well, this season I dropped the word radio off of the podcast. When I first started doing this all the way back in 2004, podcasting wasn't called podcasting. It was called internet radio. And the name of my radio show was ParaReality Radio. And I just kept that. And, it kind of doesn't fit anymore. So I debated around about dropping the reality or the radio off of the end of ParaReality. And I decided that it probably just was best for the podcast if I did that to avoid any type of confusion. So I dropped the word radio, and it just became ParaReality. So with that, I thought, I need a logo that better encompasses what I do here on the show, because the ghost logo just implied that, he talks about nothing but ghosts and paranormal stuff. Well, I do talk about that, but I talk about so much more, as is evident by season 14 being the season of conspiracy theories, right? So I talk about not just paranormal stuff, but I talk about UFOs and aliens and conspiracy theories and all kinds, any unexplained, cryptozoological species and all that. I talk about anything and everything that is weird and unusual and unexplained. And I wanted a logo that kind of was a more all-encompassing. So I got with someone, and we designed a new logo, the kind of like the all-seeing eye type deal. And that's the new logo of the show. And so I've got all new merch with the new logo on the show. And I went back and redesigned the website a little bit. And now I'm finally got the podcast on all of these different podcast platforms. So you name it, and you can listen to ParaReality on it, whatever you like to listen to, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Google Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio. I'm on all of them. And that was a big accomplishment for this year. And it took me a long time to get to be on Apple Podcast, because Apple's they're jerks. And I was having problems making it was nothing else other than the logo for my show didn't meet the size requirements for the logo. It wasn't about content. It didn't have anything to do with other than anything that my logo, the picture, didn't meet their size requirements. And I tried to get it to do, and it wouldn't work. I couldn't make it work. I don't know what the hell was going on. I even emailed Apple, and they were absolutely no help. So thanks for no help from the health department at Apple. You guys suck. I just want you to know that. So I finally got on Apple Podcasts. So you can now hear the show on Apple Podcasts. Like I said, I'm on Spreaker, Stitcher, Google Podcast, Apple. What else? Spotify. I mean, you name it, I am there. So I'm all over the place on your favorite paranormal platform, your favorite podcast platform, where you listen to all your paranormal shows. And another accomplishment that I made for this show this year was I got a Patreon account. Now, I famously said at one point in time when Patreon was getting really big was that, I'm never going to create a Patreon account and make you guys pay for the show, because I wanted it to be free. Well, that was kind of before I really understood what Patreon was all about. So, I do have a Patreon account, and there are episodes on there that you do have to be a Patreon member to listen to. And I do try to make monthly updates and posts and everything on Patreon. But it's a way for me to try to bring in some revenue to put back into the podcast so I can use to buy better equipment and everything. And, everything that I made from my shop, my merch store, goes right back into helping me produce the show and buy things like the soundboard that I'm using here. So, Patreon is another way to help me fund the show. I don't make any money. I don't keep any money from what I earn here, because it's not that much. I mean, it's practically zero. But what I do make, I save until I can put back into the show, whether it's a new microphone that I need, or a boom arm, or a board, or something like that, or some other piece of equipment. So those are kind of all the things that I had accomplished here in 2014. I got my YouTube channel all organized and everything. Some of the things that kind of went away was I had started back the News of the Strange, and I was doing a video segment, and then COVID hit, and of course, because of my other job, my day job, I didn't have time I just don't have time to devote to News of the Strange. So I don't know if that's ever going to come back, but I may try. I may do a monthly thing. I don't know. We'll see. I really do like doing that, so we'll see. So those are all the things that I got accomplished here in 2014, or in season 14. God, I just can't get away from that. So moving along to season 15, what do I have in store for season 15? Well, man, I've got plans for season 15. I really am excited for what this new season next year is going to offer. First of all, I'm going to revamp the website and make it a little bit more user-friendly. You're going to have different access points to listen to the archives, which are still free, by the way. I'm still going to continue my Patreon account and hopefully be able to make monthly posts and everything for that. But what I'm super excited about is I'm going to hopefully have more guests on the podcast, excuse me, for the next season, and do more interviews. And I know that I spend a lot of time just talking to myself in front of a microphone, i.e. like what I'm doing right now. And I know that people get bored of that, and I would really like to get some more interviews. I got some stuff that I'm working on, and I'm going to get some more interviews going on in season 15. And another thing that I'm really super excited about is, if you remember a few years ago, I was doing what I called a side project where I had a small, just like half-hour podcast that I called Set It Off. And Set It Off was just basically about, I would do it on whatever topic of the day or whatever was bugging me the most, whether it's people forgetting about their children and leaving them to suffocate and die a slow, horrible death in a hot car during the summer, to the pharmaceutical industry fucking us over, to the healthcare industry, to people who, just generally piss me off, people who can't drive, illegal immigrants, crime, all that stuff. It was just basically a 30-minute rant show where I kind of just gave my opinion on whatever topic of the day might have been. And I haven't done that side project in a couple of years. However, I am bringing that back in 2015, and I'm going to do at least a monthly podcast of Set It Off. And I'm going to bring that back, and it is going to be available. When I did it before, it was only available on the podcast host Spreaker. And I may try to distribute it a little bit more, like I'm doing with my primary podcast, ParaReality. However, I never made it available anywhere except on Spreaker, and I would tell you just had to go to Spreaker and find it. So I didn't have a lot of listeners. However, I'm going to make that available on the ParaReality website, and I can't wait. I may even have a few guests on there. You never know. I can't wait to bring that show back. I really am looking forward to doing that a lot. And like I said, I'm hopefully going to try to do News of the Strange in a video format, do that at least once a month, and have all kinds of para-reality related stuff for you to enjoy. And last but not least, another side project that I was doing was a podcast. So many podcasts at one time. Was a podcast called Scared to Death. And that was a radio drama podcast. And I would play old-timey radio shows like when I did for Dracula and War of the Worlds for Halloween this year. And as I was thinking of what to do for Halloween for 2020, because of COVID, couldn't do what I really wanted to do. I was like, man, I could play these old radio shows. So when I did that, that reminded me, man, I had this great idea of Scared to Death, and I just it just went away, mainly because of I didn't put any time or effort into it. So I'm also going to bring back Scared to Death. And once again, Scared to Death is just going to be a monthly podcast. I may bring it back to where it's biweekly, but I doubt it. But Scared to Death is going to be making its debut in January, and I'm going to start up with, I only had 2 episodes, and it was the first 2 of a 3-part episode with Kolchak the Night Stalker. So I'm basically going to restart, hit the restart switch on Scared to Death, and I'm going to start back over with episode 1 from the Night Stalker. And I'm going to play that whole series, that 3-part series. And then after that will be replays of old-timey horror, sci-fi, and thriller radio plays. And I really, really am excited about bringing that, because I don't think that many people are aware of what great radio was going on back in the 40s and 50s, when there was nothing but radio, and there, TV wasn't around yet, or wasn't that popular. People didn't have it. So there was so many great radio plays, as evidenced by Dracula and War of the Worlds, right? There's so many other ones that are out there that are just as good. And I am going to bring back as many of those as I can. So I'm going to have podcasts galore for season 15 of ParaReality. So I'm going to have my main show, ParaReality. I'm going to have a once a month, 30-minute Set It Off coming back. And I'm going to bring back a once a month Scared to Death episode. And all are going to be available on ParaReality.com. And I'm going to have more guests. I'm going to have more content on Patreon. Hopefully I can get back to doing News of the Strange, a video segment on that once a month, and have it available on my YouTube channel. And man, there's just so many great things that I have going on, or that I have in store for season 15. We're going to see if I can keep it up for a whole year. I don't know, but we're going to try to find out. So, So I hope that you enjoyed not only tonight's episode of ParaReality, but I hope you enjoyed the entire season 15. And let me know what your ideas and thoughts about it are. Send me an email, sandman@parareality.com, or get in touch with me through my social media accounts. That's Facebook, ParaReality on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/sandman.parareality, or ParaReal Radio on Twitter. Or you can always call me at the studio line, 615-692-1170. And don't forget that ParaReality.com is your basically one-stop shopping to keep up on what's going on in the latest and greatest paranormal news from all around the world. I do have a news section on the website, and that content is updated almost daily. And you can also shop in the aforementioned ParaReality Radio store and watch some terrible videos that I've made over the years for your entertainment. You can actually, if you don't have social media, if you're one of the 2 people in the world that doesn't have Facebook, or if you don't have Twitter, but you'd like to know what I post on Facebook and Twitter, because I post a lot of stuff in my opinions, or upcoming topics, or guests that may be on the show, or some interesting news articles, stuff like that. But maybe you're like, I'd like to know what he posts on Twitter, but I really don't want to get a Twitter account just for that, or I'm not going to get Facebook just for that. Well, guess what? You don't have to. You can just go to the bottom of the ParaReality.com homepage, scroll all the way down, and you can see my social media feeds from Twitter and from Facebook, and you can follow them there. And, social media is where you can find out all about what's happening behind the scenes of the podcast, because, like I said, I post a lot of interesting articles, show topics, and other interesting stuff there, like my travels and investigations. ParaReality ParaReality.com is really your one-stop shopping for everything that's going on, not only just with the podcast, but in the world of the paranormal. ParaReality can also be heard on your favorite podcast station, as I spent a little time telling you about that. Just search for ParaReality on whatever your favorite podcast platform is. And if you have a smart speaker, you can listen on your smart speaker too. If you've got any of those podcast skills, whether it's Spreaker, Amazon Podcast. I'm on Amazon Podcast now. Google, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, you name it. If you have any of those skills on your smart device, just say, play the ParaReality podcast, and bam, there you go. You can also look me up on YouTube. I do have a YouTube account, and you can listen to the podcast there because all the audio from the podcast are posted up on YouTube, and occasionally I do some videos and stuff, and I've got some great UFO and paranormal documentaries on my YouTube page. And of course, I've got that News of the Strange segment, and also those terrible videos that I did on my short-lived web TV show. So if you want to look that up, just look for ParaReality on YouTube. And of course, as I said, I now have a Patreon account for the podcast, and I'd love it if you'd sign up to be a patron. There are 3 tiers of support, and all are extremely affordable, $5 a month or less, and each level offers exclusive content, along with the ability to help create podcast episodes and even the chance to be a guest or a co-host. To learn more, just head on over to patreon.com/ParaReality and check out and see which level you'd like to support me with. 100% of the proceeds from Patreon goes back into producing this podcast, as I said. So, man, those are all the things that I have going on and all the things that I got planned for the future. Future's so bright I got to wear shades, man. That's an obscure 80s song reference for you there. Oh, man. Another thing that I'm thinking about doing, real quick, like before I go, is and I've been going by this nickname of Sandman for so long. I'm thinking about just dropping it and using my real name. I don't know. I'd like to know what my loyal listeners think about. Should I keep it up? Should I just keep the air of mystery and just keep Sandman, or should I just drop it and just go by my real name? Because there's a lot of people that know my real name anyway. So I'd like to know what you think about that. So send me an email, sandman@parareality.com, and let me know, should I keep the Sandman nickname, or should I just start using my real nickname? Let me know. I've got a poll posted on my Twitter account. I may even post one on Facebook too. So, maybe start off 2015 totally fresh. God damn it. Maybe start off season 15 in 2021 totally fresh. Who knows? Living in the past for some reason. All right. That about does it. I better quit while I'm ahead before I totally screw something else up. Everybody, the season 15 premiere of ParaReality is actually going to be on New Year's Day, January 1st. That is the first Friday of January, the first Friday of the new year. So that's the premiere, season 15 ParaReality, January 1st at 8 o'clock p.m. Central U.S. time. Make sure you tune in, and find out. I hope that this podcast opens up your mind to new ways of thinking, expands your consciousness, and produces a change in the way you see the world. If you wish to change, you must lift the veil of ignorance that has been cast over your eyes. Only then will you see the true power of the universe. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your 2020, wonderful Christmas, a great New Year's, and I will see you again on January 1st. Good night, everybody, and let's hope that I can do this without screwing this up. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.
If you wish to change, you must first lift the veil of ignorance that has been cast over your eyes. Only then will you see the true power of the universe.